This is a video about telling brand stories on the internet and curation as a reflection of you. I'm going to talk about mood board brands, aesthetics as storytelling, using those as a social media foundation for branding, and break down brands that do this at a different level and some of the mood boarding tools that people actually roll with. And we're going to shift over to individual, this kind of idea of breaking down the old version of you and creating a new one online. So first I'm going to talk about the giants of mood board branding, one of the most dominant of which is Sporty Rich. After the giants, I'll break down some smaller brands doing interesting things in a similar space. But from the beginning, Sporty Rich has basically put themselves out there as a mood, even in their latest campaigns, like new stuff in the last, this is August 13th. Right now it's August 31st. They are promoting their next launch by curating pictures of Britney. From the start, they always had the 80s, 90s, university, 2000 mood board items that were on their page as part of their content strategy. Before they released any original content, it was curated content that basically set the vibe. And the reason that this one is interesting is this is a relatively divisive brand because there's plenty of people that think it's undifferentiated or don't like the name, and then they have to have a huge rabid customer base that buys out everything they've ever done. But even here, they have literally, they're using Adidas iconography and Adidas vault items going into their Adidas collaboration. And then they've supplemented it over time by making their content, their campaigns, and their lookbooks look like this curated mood board environment that they already created for the brand. But what they are doing is they are establishing lore that they may not have individually. Like when this brand came out as the brainchild of someone that was relatively known in the hypebeast community, Emily, who's the founder. But to tell their story and to tell people what to expect from the brand, they used a mood board to create that and have continued to throughout their brand story. And the reason I want to talk about this is it's actually a really nuanced topic because these images aren't theirs. If you go consult some kind of attorney, they'd be like, yeah, I wouldn't post that as a brand. But yet they do, and they're massive, and plenty of other big brands do. And there's this kind of line happening here of like, okay, is someone going to get clamped down on or not? And then there's also brands like we'll talk about Hidden next, who basically built their entire presence before launching a brand on this curation. But the entire purpose of this is it is the fastest way, if you are someone with taste, or if you have someone who has a particular vision in mind, to explain it to your audience is to do it visually. And brands that have been around forever, you generally know what you expect from them. That can change over time. The way Abercrombie has kind of the same identity, but it's moved a little bit different in this era than it did when I worked there 20 years ago. But in the previous era, you had to be doing advertising campaigns and putting things on TV and doing lookbooks, making sure you actually get in front of somebody that they could hunt down. Whereas now you can tell your story on a grid on the internet, and the algorithm is getting increasingly good at putting that content in front of people. And I'd like to give two notes on the TikTok and Instagram algorithm. And for context on why I can do that, obviously I'm a pretty big creator on those algorithms myself, and I've now worked with upwards of 30, 40 brands on their content, plus almost 1,000 people now, I think, or maybe over 1,000 in Cut 30. And the way those algorithms work that benefits mood board items like this is Instagram has big buckets. If it is like, hey, you are into streetwear, it will show you lots of streetwear. If you are into this Ivy League aesthetic, it will push you in this Ivy League aesthetic, like the old money. If you like luxury fashion, if you like Celine content, it will show you Prada content. It is good at these big buckets. And then TikTok is ultra nuanced. If you're really deep in coquette or mermaid core or whatever it is, it will keep giving you to a level of nuance that is actually almost shocking. But that means that if you put aesthetic content out around a brand, the algorithm can identify you're in one of those buckets. It is good at delivering it to the end customer, which is why this mood board concept works. So this entire Sporty Rich brand was built on establishing a vibe and then establishing lore and then selling things that are akin to that to people. Starting off very basic, like just putting the words on a shirt, all the way now to collaborating with some of the brands that they initially had on the mood boards, all the way to creating items that are far more representative and well executed that actually really match that vibe better than anyone else is doing. But then we have Pool Suite and Vacation. So you may have heard of Vacation sunscreen. They have this very strong 80s vibe, excellent iconography. And they spun out of this Pool Suite account, which was an internet radio account and basically a mood board Instagram account. And why I like to call them out and call out Sporty and Rich and call out Hidden, which I'll do next, is they all took these kind of different approaches to how they inevitably launched a brand. And they're worth understanding as if you want to build a visually inspired brand and take advantage of aesthetics, or you want to be a creator who leverages this in your own way. And I get to personal later in the video. These are worth understanding, these methods. So Pool Suite started with excellent curation, both on the music front and on the visual front. And they had some of their own graphics where they kind of obviously create these Photoshop CD concepts when they drop new playlists, but it is all curated graphics, all mood board account graphics. And they basically basically selected those to create a vibe for the brand. And one of the other things they did really well is the tone of voice that they wrote, which is something I think a lot of accounts don't take into as much mind. And part of why they had success is they went from vibes to vibes and lore. Lore basically being the storytelling you're doing around the feeling, the characters, like the world building that becomes in addition to like the visual feel that you're getting. And so with this, they always had a certain tone of voice. They always had references to positions inside the pool suite company. It would address a lot of things like a corporate memo. They had these really interesting copywriting techniques complemented with the visuals that really built a world. But what you'll notice is that they decided to spin out a company separately. And this is, I think, a lot comes down to like the ownership of this content, right? Like this is not their content. You can post a mood board account on the internet. You generally don't get in trouble doing a thing like that. You may get into some sort of back and forth, which I know creators who have. But for the most part, people just generally do this all day without very little repercussions at various extents of things. All the way from this to like what Maximize does, which is like taking someone's art and making his own amazing art out of it. But they said, hey, we're going to launch our own account, new account for this brand specifically, which is now the core focus. There's not much posting on Pool Suite. There's a lot of posting on vacation. They made they took a popular category. They said, we're going to apply aesthetics to a popular category. And I love that they did it in this versus clothing, right? Because clothing and fashion is extremely hypersaturated. Doesn't mean you can't succeed, but actually going and creating a thing with a formulation with an aesthetic feel. Like if you're the only aesthetic sunscreen brand, is a significantly easier way to succeed in that lane and to present yourself than if you are one of a million aesthetic clothing brands. And no matter if you think I have this specific look, you can go find 20 brands online that probably have a very similar look. They've also been around for a time, have curated an audience, etc. But they're still doing, this idea of curation as well. There's images that pop into this from like on their feed, still from the 80s. And then they're recreating that same style with their own ads, which is an amazing example, I feel like, of taking your aesthetic basis, taking your mood board, and then making the mood board your own by basically turning that into like an aesthetic toolkit you can use. This is something I'm pretty actively working on right now. I'm at the early stages of my brand, which is like more of a grand experiment, like everything I do. But like where I'm taking these like vintage advertising looks. I'll do a future video where I break down how we made this, but like basically like an old magazine ad, but with video, right? Like there's an idea of you can take these aesthetics that people are expecting of what like a 2000s catalog looks like, and then add your own twist to it, and you begin to have like a visual environment for yourself. But to summarize, like Sporty Rich started with mood board and brand at once from the beginning and has kept it going the whole time. Pool Suite started as pure vibes, spun a brand off on it, and keeps basically like a 90-10 brand with those same like lore and imagery with a little bit of like curation left on it. And that was like a transition between the two. And then we have Hidden New York, basically the ultimate mood board account. And they post like an incredible amount of content. Like I remember, especially at the beginning when I first, so they were posting, it went from like a handful to like 8, 10, 12 a day. There's like an unlimited amount of things that like they're posting. Like all these I see here, there's 3 a day, 4, that was just 7 in a day, 3 in a day, 2 in a day, 5 in a day. Like they post a ton, pure curation. This entire like pop culture vibe spanning a number of things they do, and probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, mood board account with like cultural resonance. And what they did was cross post a lot to then build out their hidden past, present, future brand. So they've combined a couple things here, right? Interesting to talk about, because they also sell access to information. You can pay to be like on the Substack and get access to their deep dives on the cultural things they talk about. Basically, they have like a journalism play. And then also when you're subscribed to that, I believe you get access to the drops and things early as well. So you basically are able to kind of go into buy the products. But they built up pretty large before launching those products, but now they've now developed their own accounts for this, where they are dropping new stuff all the time. Like it is a steady stream of like at least monthly, like pretty significant releases and collaborations, where they've kind of built their own aesthetic on top of the cultural things that made them popular for curating. And I'm gonna talk about one more, and then we're gonna get into like some of the core concepts and like the tools here. So then we have Americana Pipe Dream. And if you haven't seen this is a like oddball version of this, right? Because it's an interesting niche. They're essentially like an army surplus store. And they have a series of like, they do a bunch of their own informational videos and like funny reels and have a lot of entertainment content, similar to how you could be like a creator-led brand would look. So they'll have all that going on, breaking down all these like oddball items that they're finding. But then you have essentially like a constant stream of faux military, like quasi redneck Americana memes and curation of all kinds, like all related to like military surplus and history. And they're kind of combining all this at once. But the effect of that is you get every type of content that someone in their target market might like. If they're very meme driven, if they like more like creator style videos, if they like purely like curated mood board kind of photos and carousels, they are giving it all extremely particular around this like oddball vibe of like German armored vehicles, who used what camo, like in the name of selling like surplus stuff and and send some of their own products. And this is an excellent idea. I love bringing this up because it's that right combination that shows like this isn't just about fashion brands or cool CPG brands. Like they're selling like Oddball camo and like tins and tents and whatever it is that comes from this, like MREs, to a demographic that is like all over the place. There's all kinds of different types of people of all ages that are into that. And they're using that combination of like lore throughout history and like fun facts and time and like interesting stories, plus their own comedic like approaches, like almost like a YouTube style like prank channel, like on one corner. And then just weaponizing memes like absolutely constantly, like in a way that's like in cultural people, like it will slither onto my feed and I'll be like, oh, like I understand exactly what they're doing. And the combination of like weaponizing all of those is like a true like lore driven brand to the point now where they're like a reference point for other people that means something. If you say Americana Pipe Dream to someone that knows it, like there's a whole bunch of implications that come from that in their history. And it's a very like of the internet type thing. So this is a good time to talk about this concept of, it's a Venn diagram, product market fit and content market. So you're going to see a couple things here that are worth it. There's a lot of curator accounts, people that just put like amazing curation on the internet. So my hyper newsletter I do with another creator, Clayton, who runs this account called Sprezza, a newsletter that goes with it that is very much like menswear curation. And it'll be like Bruce Willis's vibes from whenever. He is very like menswear inspired, does an excellent job curating this. Like has a newsletter around it, like isn't selling like a product based on it, but it's like an excellent curator. That's a good example. You know, he's one of like hundreds of people that do this in their different areas and niches, but a lot of them can't monetize, or when they monetize, the products don't resonate. And the same thing goes for creators, right? Like I recognize I'm a creator that educates a lot on design, branding, and marketing. I launched products that are like very particularly niched, and the Venn diagram with my audience is not necessarily super large. There's people in my audience that will really enjoy some of those products, but I'm not expecting the majority to. And that's I think a good thing when you understand like as a creator to actually not have your brand be super encumbered to like who you are, and so you can do more interesting things with it, have it go in different directions, not have your content be dominated by it. But you'll notice when creators fail or curator accounts fail, they may have content market fit, where they're able to make content that works in the algorithms that people like and love. That if you do that, you have content market. As a short form video creator, I have content market fit. Long form, we're getting there. But then product wise, or product market fit is very different, right? Because do you have a product that just, whether or not you're a creator, no matter what, someone just buys it, are they going to recommend it to a friend? Are people coming and getting sales from you without you doing anything? Are people like, is there a feeling where people talk and are excited of your brand without you being around it? And is that like continuing to bring you money without having to spend marketing dollars? That's my shady version of like what the product market fit description is. And sometimes those Venn diagrams can be very different, right? So someone like Sporty and Rich, that Venn diagram is a circle. To their female demographic that is interested in that visual style, they are providing clothing that is exactly on point. For Hidden, there is probably a significant, like a half and half overlap, where there's a lot of people that are interested, like the hypebeast contingent of people that follow them understand what the clothes look like, there's a technical style of the garments, like there's a chunk of those people. Let's say it's even a quarter. They're like, okay, that's perfect for them, but their audience is so big, 2.6 million or whatever, that quarter is like a huge demographic. And someone like Americana Pipe Dream, right? If you're interested in all this like weirdo oddball, like military facts and like somewhat like intelligentsia meets redneck humor, then you're probably going to be interested in a good chunk of their products. There is a pretty significant content overlap there. But you have to have both for these things to work, right? Because you can create an aesthetic, but if what you're selling doesn't quite match the aesthetic, or people that are interested in it don't want to buy it at that price point or whatever it is, then you can kind of miss out there. And that's why I like what Pool Suite did, is like anyone who's in the sun uses sunscreen, a huge chunk of life. If you're choosing that and you have some level of brand affinity, and then also you could stand out aesthetically on the shelf, like I feel like they have product market fit purely from okay, there are people that will just buy that vibe without knowing any of the history or like any of the branding, being like, oh, I like the retro one. Like they have this like an interesting like visual product market fit's probably like a separate video. But like creating this aesthetic lore for your brand and this history and these stories that people roll with can help you achieve content market fit, and it can help like expedite your product market fit. And I feel like when you add those two together and you have both of them, you are significantly better than having one or the other. It's not like 1 + 1, it is a multiple upon that. And that's what these like lore driven accounts do. So how do you actually find imagery for stuff like that? So the obvious is Pinterest, but like the funny part about Pinterest to me is like most people don't know how to use Pinterest. Probably my most used app. When I use like OneSec and Brick, which are like little things I do that basically help me not scroll and like not consume on the internet when I don't want to, I leave Pinterest on. It's an app where I basically default to. If I'm going on social media, I go on there. It's like an inspiration app. But the nice part about Pinterest, I'm just going to go to a board here I'm working on with like the team I have that's working on like our next shoe silhouettes. Like we're just putting some ideas on this board. But see this, anytime you make a board and put some pins on it. So I literally pin stuff from Pinterest and upload stuff from my computer onto this board. And then you see this section here, find some ideas for this board. Click that. They are basically taking the visual visuals you put on there, and their algorithm is curating you a bunch more that are hyper relevant. And for instance, for this like shoe silhouette, like, I mean, man, like 1 out of every 5 of these is kind of relevant for this board. They are very good at this, and they do this across demographics and visuals. Let's take a look at another board with a completely different feel. So this is one I was working on for Gel Blaster has like an in-person video game thing they're doing at Family Entertainment Centers. That's like super sick, and we were doing a bunch of visual planning for that and for the photo shoots. This is really like photo shoot based around this. We had like a bunch of like anime and like cyberpunk stuff, but like same thing. Like this is literally giving me like photo and visual inspiration in like these like oddball futurist styles. Like same thing, giving me a bunch there. And so what people don't realize is like, okay, I don't actually have to go hunt down all those. Like the algorithms on Pinterest will help you hunt down specifically the imagery that you're going for, which is a plus sign. And they are curating from a lot of the other mood board apps too. So if you've not used that more like this function, it is a useful thing in whether just your general creative career or for this. Then we have Cosmos. So Cosmos is an interesting stage right now. So a new mood boarding app, super interesting team. They have a much more curated version of Pinterest. Like this is their featured feed. They're curating this feed that comes on, which is very well done. So it's basically like having a Tumblr that was like very curated by some really visually inspired people every day. And it has a for you algorithm based on the things I'm already pinning. But since it is still relatively small and the people that are using it are kind of the right people and they are kind of forcing the hand inside this featured section of a lot of what is on the platform, the aesthetics here are very, very good. And while this lasts, like someday when they get heavy adoption, you're not going to be able to fight for it forever. I'm sure there will be a dearth of like mediocre content on there. But until then, this is an excellent place with which you are able to get that, basically work with inside the same Pinterest framework. They have what's called clusters, which are boards. They have a couple other interesting tools, but this isn't a Cosmos ad, so I won't go too deep into it. But basically, this is a great place to find visual inspiration in a similar way, in a more curated fashion, if these visuals are the kind of things that appeal to you inside what you're building. And then we have Arena, which is where art directors and creative directors and designers who are like serious actually work. So what I like the most about the Arena feed is that actual working professionals use it and share it a lot more than Pinterest and the others. It's not like just creative professionals, like the right creative professionals. Like the difference between like, hey, like I'm on a shoot and I'm working with, I'm trying to think of like mainstream stuff. Like, like I'm on the shoot and I'm working with the Pepsi team. Like I'm probably getting like a Pinterest link or something from their damn digital asset management. But if I'm working with like a team and they're doing a shoot with Dazed or whatever, it's going to be like an Arena board. And I think that's where like you can just tell by the people who have like that certain like cultural standard are working inside this framework. And the reason is because like those other people are on it, right? So the actual level of stuff you can get and go down the rabbit hole on, like this is channels that otherwise feature this channel. And you can basically go down the rabbit hole of like actual amazing people that are working, who are kind of curating a bunch of these kind of like extremely well done, like thought, look and feel at a level that other people aren't. And then you can actually go and be like, all right, I like this visual vibe. Oh, here's all the other boards that it's featured in, and be like, okay, cool. Someone all right, Eric has put 7.4 thousand pins on his type design board. Like he's obviously taking this shit seriously. I can go look at this for my type inspiration. And so Arena is like the ultimate rabbit hole mood board brand. So it's worth understanding like the 3 apps, the kind of differences between them, but this is your toolkit. If you are trying to establish lore for your brand online, want to put visuals out there before you release things or while you release things to help tell a visual story, there's a lot that happens inside these apps to help bring you the imagery that does it. And then we have like the more expanded versions, right? If you actually want to go and find things other people don't have, you're dealing with like internet archives, using the Wayback Machine, which is where you can kind of go down websites that used to exist and try to find and like scrape images from them because it has like a picture of these images, and you can put in like looking at a website through time and how it changed. Or you're buying lots of magazines off eBay or wherever. There's a Japanese version of it, I forget the name of that. And you're basically buying big chunks of magazines, and like I have grips inside my shelving of like I have like all these vintage High Times lots, and like even Newsweek was really solid just for ads. Like even things like all the archives of like the Chrome Hearts mags. This is where you can really like start to actually dig into images other people don't have, right? Everything else that you've seen, have gone through the internet, like someone else can ideally get to. There's a difference between that and like imagery people have seen before, imagery that you're presenting in a new way, and then this like third party, like undiscovered imagery where you're unearthing archives. So I'm gonna zip through a few more of these real quick just so you can see some other examples that aren't like absolutely massive. So Metalwood's another good one, like around 50K, where they are combining all this like internet iconography in their products. Like obviously this is like a super famous ad that they then recreated with a Metalwood golf ball instead of this used to be like it was like a tennis ball ad prior. If it was like Wilson or Lacoste or whoever that was back in the day. They are taking all this internet iconography and building it into this like amalgamation of their brand and basically adding in golf and their iconography on top of it in a way that is excellent. So I think they're a great example of a brand kind of doing like creating their own visual lore in an interesting way. Gumtree Golf is another one where they're doing a lot of like presenting this like visual idea of like being outside and the more like existential side of golf, birds and whatnot, and they're like kind of applying the same mood board aesthetic, but they'll have like unique visual ideas, like this notification silence idea, and like they're basically curating a carousel around that, like with their entire brand vibe. Whether these may all be original pictures, some might be original or mood board, not sure, but it's this idea of creating that visual idea that goes with it. So I'm going to end with talking about like the role of an individual in this as well. Is because I do think for a lot of creatives, designers, brand owners now, you are an extension of your brand. And I like the hidden example a lot because it's basically like you have them and they're anonymous. They sell media, they sell clothing, all on the back of basically their taste level. Now for a lot of creatives and a lot of people that put content out there on the internet, or they're trying to do that, or they need to showcase their taste in one way, I believe that less so than starting a major brand and expecting huge success from that, I believe we're going to see a lot more people that are like amalgamations of this. And I will likely do a studios video at some point. I know I always rattle off in these like, videos that will come in the future, but they slowly trickle out. But basically this idea that you're going to be able to potentially launch a brand at some point, potentially sell info products or templates or subscriptions to your newsletter, your Substack or whatever, and then also offer your freelance work and your services and things that you do, or just like want to get a job. We are now in this world where like I basically like having a portfolio like isn't quite the right way to storytell. Instead, it's this combo of like show your taste via curation. Like these are the things I like. This is how I think. And there's a certain degree of people that are going to be really connected to that and follow you for that, and they can begin to associate things with you around that. And that can come from like on your personal account, like posting the selects of the things you like, right? Like so Clayton's account who I showed earlier, like he has an extremely tasteful account that shows his acumen for identifying those things. And when work comes to him, a lot of it comes from people who recognize that or who think in a similar way, who go, I want someone that thinks like that to work on this project. Even when we started collaborating, like I knew him lightly, but I could tell immediately by what was on the feed that he thinks about things in a really intentional way. And it's a different way than how I think. And I like that compliment. But one exercise I talk a lot about, like with creatives I run into like in the real world who are stuck, is like there's this moment you need to have of like a creative reinvention. And it's also a moment that repeats, right? Because I feel like everyone needs to think that I have this identity and I stick with it forever, when that's not the case, right? It's like at some point in time, you're gonna need to reinvent. And for some people, that might be every 6 months you open a new chapter of your life or whatever. And like you need to go through like these phases of reinvention where it's like, cool, I'm gonna clear my mood boards, I'm gonna start something new, I'm gonna add new things to my account, I'm gonna begin to find a vibe that I wanna present for myself, that I wanna like use to inspire how I think, like the things on my wall or in my environment or like around in my house or on the background of my phone or whatever, or like is going to actually influence how I think and act because it's front of mind, which is like a really crucial thing that I think a lot of creatives need to understand, is like the visual things around you are going to then influence how you think and what you create, and then how you present that forward facing, right? Because I think it's good to let people know what to expect and to know what you're into and to be able to take pride in the things that you're interested in and potentially like put your own spin on it or make an edit or curate your carousel or whatever that looks like, and then recurringly do that so that when someone goes to your social media feed, they can see a combination of the work you've done, you've posted your portfolio stuff, the things that you're into and like, and presented in your own like interesting way. And you begin to have this like offline and online persona that kind of ties together, that moves in seasons or years or waves. And I do think it's worth like thinking like if you're in a rut, right? Like, have I been in this rut for a long time? Like, would this rut be changed if I had a more like of a visual focus or a like philosophical focus right now on how I think about things or what I want to achieve? And then like kind of identify a time frame for that. I think for a lot of people, like sometimes you need to make moves. Like you need to change your visual look and feel and what you're into like every 6 months. You need to clear the walls, like clear the mood boards, like clear the wardrobe, sell stuff on Depop or Grilled or whatever, like come back with like a new visual sense of yourself and to like keep things moving, to keep yourself stimulated. There's a lot of people that are like that who I think wait way too long versus just doing it and like finding your own way to like have a ritual that like creatively resets yourself. And I've been thinking about this a lot, like for myself personally, like as I make a lot of content. And I've started posting a lot more vlog content where I just show the things like in and around my world, the things that I have, the things I'm into, the places that I go, because I'm trying to be more intentional about like what that looks like. And I'm trying to showcase this idea more of like, instead of just being purely a curator of ideas, that like there is a visual and inspirational like lifestyle that goes along with that, that is not about like money or like any like some degree of success or whatever it is. It's about like curating the interesting visual things like in your life and creating a library of them, and then sharing that like with the internet is a concept I'm playing with. I'm trying to really double down on. I'm looking at being like, okay, cool, I really want to do that for this next 6 months heavily, and then decide if I want to continue from there. One of the best reasons to have this kind of mood board sensibility and aesthetic and the things that you're putting out there, to me, is really around like the things that you have around you in your life, the things that you post as a reflection of yourself are the things that like tend to come true. And I'm not saying that always happens, but more often than not, the people that I know that very seriously take the intentions of I'm going to become this, or I'm going to do X and Y, or I have all these pictures up on the vision board and I continually think about, like, they're not just on the board, but how do I get to there? How do I make decisions around that? Like, are the people that actually achieve it? And we're in this living, breathing experience now where we're on our phones so much and we're required to do so much work, and we're having all these like new experiences and this ability to like shift your visual identity all the time, or to reinvent yourself, or to put out a piece of content that could change your life, that I feel like it's almost more important than ever. And to have those, like, really think through like, what is this visual theme and this identity and this lore and history and mystery that I have as a person, of the things I do and the things I choose to do, whether you're in LA or whether you're in Kentucky, like wherever you choose to go put online, but what your weekend looked like and your curated version of that, and what you printed out from a mood board, or how you looked, or like the vehicle you chose, or the places you went, or your unique spin on capturing content of them. really becomes like a summation of your identity. And I know a lot of us don't want that. We want to be more than what we represent online. But the truth is the work that we get so often comes from that, or is reinforced by that, or opportunities that we get come from people that talk about us when we're not in the room based on things that we put online, that it just becomes gradually more important than ever. So really the point of that, this like last chunk of this conversation, was to be intentional about that, to know that that is a factor in where you go creatively or as a brand, and to think about what you want to achieve, the phase you're in, and if you need a reset or if you need longer time to do it.